The desert wind howled like a forgotten ghost across the cracked asphalt of the old highway gas station, kicking up swirls of dust that stung the eyes and carried the faint, acrid scent of spilled fuel. It was just past midnight, the kind of hour when the world felt empty, save for the distant rumble of semis slicing through the night. Under the flickering neon sign that buzzed "Open 24/7" in faded red letters, a small figure huddled against the wall. A boy no older than 8, his thin frame shivering in an oversized jacket that swallowed him whole. His knees were drawn up to his chest, and fat tears carved clean paths down his dirt-streaked cheeks. In his trembling hand, he clutched a crumpled piece of paper. The edges frayed as if it had been read 100 times already. The note was simple, scrawled in hasty pencil. "Can't take care of you anymore. Be good, Mom." No name, no explanation, just those words left pinned to his shirt like a discarded label. The station attendant, a weary man with grease-stained hands, had spotted him an hour earlier from the window of his booth. He'd called out once, but the boy hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, just stared at the horizon as if waiting for a miracle that never came. Now, the attendant paced inside, phone in hand, debating whether to dial the authorities. Out here in the middle of nowhere, help was a long ride away, and the boy's wide, terrified eyes haunted him. What kind of world left a child like this, abandoned under the stars, with nothing but echoes and emptiness? The low growl of an engine shattered the silence, growing from a distant purr to a thunderous roar that vibrated through the ground. Headlights pierced the darkness like twin beacons, cutting through the dust as a lone motorcycle pulled into the lot. The rider, a broad-shouldered man in weathered leather, killed the engine with a flick of his wrist, the sudden quiet amplifying the boy's soft sobs. Ethan Harlan, 42, with salt and pepper stubble and scars that mapped a life of hard miles, swung his leg over the bike, his boots crunching on the gravel. He'd been riding solo for hours, chasing the ghosts of old regrets along this forgotten stretch of road. The iron promise patch on his vest gleamed faintly under the neon, a symbol of the brotherhood he'd sworn to years ago, back when promises meant something unbreakable. Ethan's gaze landed on the boy first, instinct pulling him like a magnet. He froze for a beat, the air thick with the smell of cooling metal from his Harley. The kid looked up, eyes red-rimmed and pleading, and in that moment, something shifted in Ethan's chest, a crack in the armor he'd built after losing his own family to the bottle and bad choices a decade back. He approached slowly, hands visible, voice low and steady like the hum of a well-tuned engine. "Hey, little man, you okay out here?" The boy flinched but didn't run, unfolding just enough to hold out the note. Ethan's jaw tightened as he read it, the paper trembling in the wind. Abandonment. It hit him like a punch, stirring memories of his sister's kid, the nephew he'd failed to protect, before the accident that still woke him in cold sweats. Kneeling to the boy's level, Ethan scanned the empty lot, the shadows stretching long under the pumps. No car, no sign of anyone, just the boy and his note, a silent cry in the night. "What's your name, kid?" he asked gently. The boy whispered, "Noah," his voice barely cutting through the breeze. Ethan nodded, pocketing the note with care. "I'm Ethan. And listen, Noah, no one's leaving you out here alone. Not on my watch." He shrugged off his jacket, draping it over the boy's shoulders, the leather warm from the ride. It dwarfed him, but it was a shield, a promise wrapped in worn hide. Deep down, Ethan knew this wasn't just a stop, it was a pull from the past, a chance to honor the vow he'd made to himself after burying his regrets, to stand for the lost ones when no one else would. As the station attendant finally emerged, wiping his hands on a rag, Ethan waved him off with a nod. "I'll handle this. Got a crew not far behind." The man hesitated, then retreated, trusting the quiet authority in the biker's stance. Ethan lifted Noah effortlessly, settling him on the bike's passenger seat, with the jacket bundled around him like a cocoon. The engine roared back to life, a defiant bellow against the indifferent night, and they pulled away slowly, headlights carving a path into the dark. But Ethan's mind raced ahead. He couldn't just ride off with the kid. That note burned in his pocket like an unfinished oath. Dawn was hours away, but he knew where to turn. The Iron Promise compound, a ragged outpost of loyalty forged in fire and forgotten wars. His brothers, scattered but bound by blood and word, would answer the call, one lost boy, and suddenly the weight of old promises felt alive again. The road unspooled beneath them, stars wheeling overhead in a vast, uncaring sky. Noah clung to Ethan's waist, his small hands fisting the leather vest, the first hints of trust flickering in his grip. Ethan glanced back once, the gas station shrinking in the mirror, a lonely sentinel fading into memory. He'd walked away from too many messes in his life, debts unpaid, faces forgotten. But this was different, a promise unspoken yet ironclad. He'd never let go. Not of the boy, not of the honor that had kept him riding when everything else crumbled. As the miles blurred, Ethan felt the stirrings of something bigger, a chain reaction, pulling his scattered family together for a fight that wasn't about fists or fury, but about reclaiming what the world had tried to discard. Back at the station, the wind died down, leaving only the buzz of the neon sign. But out on the highway, a new rumble built. Headlights in the distance, engines sinking like heartbeats. Ethan's phone vibrated in his pocket. A text from his second-in-command. Heard the call. We're mobilizing. 50 miles out, the convoy assembled, bikes gleaming under the moon, riders nodding in silent accord. A single note had ignited it all, drawing them from their solitary paths. Justice wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was the steady thrum of wheels on asphalt, carrying a broken promise toward redemption. By the time they reached the first outpost, a weathered diner off the interstate, its windows fogged with the warmth of coffee and grease, the sky hinted at grey. Noah had dozed against Ethan's back, exhaustion claiming him at last. Ethan eased the bike to a stop, the convoy pulling in behind like a steel river. His brothers dismounted, faces etched with the same quiet resolve that had bound them through deployments and betrayals. "What's the play, Hawk?" one asked, using the old call sign from their service days. Ethan met their eyes, the note now shared among them. "We find who did this. We make it right, for him and for the promises we keep." The diner door creaked open, spilling yellow light onto the lot. Inside, over mugs of black coffee that steamed like unspoken vows they planned. Maps spread on the scarred wooden table, voices low and measured. Noah stirred, blinking at the circle of leather-clad guardians, and for the first time, a small smile tugged at his lips. Ethan ruffled his hair, the gesture simple, profound. In that moment, under the diner's hum and the scent of frying bacon, a family was reborn, not by blood, but by choice. The road ahead twisted with shadows of corruption, hints of a system that turned blind eyes to the vulnerable, but they rode for the light. One boy, one note, one unbreakable hold. And as the sun crested the horizon, gilding the bikes in gold, the promise echoed, never let go. The steam from the coffee mugs curled upward like whispers of secrets long buried, mingling with the sizzle of eggs on the diner's griddle. The air inside was thick with the aroma of bacon grease and fresh brewed Java, a comforting haze that wrapped around the group of bikers like an old blanket. Ethan Harlan sat at the head of the scarred oak table, Noah perched on a stool beside him, nibbling at a plate of pancakes that dwarfed his small hands. The boy's eyes darted from face to face, taking in the circle of weathered men, each one a pillar of leather and resolve. Their vests patched with the Iron Promise emblem, a coiled serpent around a shield that spoke of oaths etched in blood and time. James Rook Caldwell, Ethan's second-in-command, leaned forward, his calloused fingers tracing a route on the unfolded map. At 45, Rook carried the weight of their shared history in the faint lines around his eyes, remnants of nights spent dodging shadows in foreign sands. The note's handwriting, it's shaky, like someone in a hurry. No postmark, no envelope. Kid says his mum dropped him off around dusk, mentioned a town called Willow Creek, about 50 miles east. His voice was gravelly, measured, the kind that cut through chaos without raising volume. The others nodded. Benjamin, the quiet medic with hands steady as a surgeon's. Lucas, the wiry scout whose instincts had saved them more times than they could count. And a handful more, their bikes lined up outside like silent sentinels under the rising sun. Ethan's gaze lingered on Noah, who was dipping a fork into syrup with tentative swipes, the sweetness a stark contrast to the bitterness of his night. The jacket Ethan had given him still hung loose, now zipped up against the diner's draft. Willow Creek, Ethan repeated, the name stirring a faint echo in his memory. It was a speck on the map, a fading cluster of trailers and dusty fields where dreams went to wither. He'd passed through once, years ago, chasing leads on a debt that wasn't his, but felt like it. That was before the accident. The screech of tires on rain-slicked roads, the silence that followed when his nephew's laughter turned to absence. The guilt had chained him to the road ever since, a nomad bound by promises he couldn't keep to those he'd lost. Finding Noah felt like fate's cruel joke, or maybe its redemption. A second chance to hold on when everything else slipped away. Outside, the first rays of dawn painted the lot in hues of amber and rose. The chrome on the Harleys catching the light like polished armor. Engines ticked as they cooled, a rhythmic pulse that mirrored the men's unspoken bond. They'd all answered Ethan's call in the dead of night, texts pinging through the dark, voices crackling over lines worn thin by distance. For the kid, Rook had said simply when he pulled up. No questions, no hesitation. That's what the Iron Promise was. Not a club of outlaws, but a covenant forged in the fires of war and loss, where loyalty outlasted the rust on their machines. They'd pulled each other from wreckage before, literal and otherwise, and now this boy's crumpled note had reignited that fire. Noah set down his fork, his small voice breaking the low murmur. She said she'd be back, but the car just drove away. The words hung heavy, drawing sympathetic grunts from the table. Ethan's hand rested on the boy's shoulder, a steady anchor. We'll find her, Noah, or whoever's behind this. No one gets left behind, not if we have a say. It was more than a promise. It was the creed that had kept him upright when the bottle called loudest, when the shadows of his past whispered surrender. He thought of his sister, her final plea before the crash. Watch over him, Ethan. Promise me. He'd failed then, drowned in grief and denial, but the scar of that broken word had carved him into the man who stopped for strays on empty roads. Rook folded the map, his eyes narrowing as he glanced out the window. A sheriff's cruiser rolled past on the interstate, slow and deliberate, its lights off but presence heavy. Words probably out by now. Attendant might have called it in after we left. Tension rippled through the group, a subtle shift like the gathering of storm clouds. Willow Creek wasn't just any town. Whispers from old rides spoke of a sheriff's office tangled in favors. He's turning blind to the desperate for the right price. Corruption festered there, the kind that abandoned the vulnerable to the wind, much like the note pinned to Noah's shirt. Ethan's jaw set, the salt and pepper stubble catching the light. They weren't storming in with guns blazing, that wasn't their way. Justice came quiet, through truths unearthed and loyalties tested, a moral reckoning that left no room for shadows. As the plates cleared, the men rose, boots scuffing the linoleum with purpose. Benjamin knelt by Noah, checking him over with gentle efficiency. No bruises visible, but the boy's haunted gaze told a deeper story. You're safe now, champ. We've got you. Noah nodded, a spark of something like hope flickering in his eyes. Ethan lifted him onto his shoulders, the weight light but profound, and they stepped into the morning air. The sun climbed higher, warming the chill from their bones, while the convoy revved to life, a symphony of growls and pops that echoed across the empty lots. Tires bit into gravel, kicking up faint dust devils that danced in the breeze, carrying the scent of oil and open road. They rode east, a phalanx of steel and will, the highway stretching like a vein toward Willow Creek. Ethan led, Noah secured in a makeshift harness of straps and jackets, the boy's arms wrapped around his neck. The wind whipped past, tousling hair and vest fringes, a cleansing rush that blurred the line between past and present. Memories surfaced unbidden, the day he'd joined the Iron Promise, swearing on a battered Bible under a desert moon, vowing to stand for the forsaken. That oath had pulled him from the abyss after his family's loss, piece by jagged piece. Now, with Noah's breath steady against his back, it felt whole again, a bridge from regret to resolve. Miles melted away, the landscape shifting from barren flats to scrubby hills dotted with skeletal trees. Rook rode flank, signaling stops at crossroads, eyes scanning for tails. No cruiser followed, but the air hummed with anticipation, the ethical tightrope of their quest pulling taut. What if the mother was trapped, coerced by forces bigger than fear? What if the system itself was the abandoner, turning cheeks for profit? Ethan's mind churned, the note's words a mantra against the roar. Can't take care of you anymore. But they could. They would. As Willow Creek's faded sign loomed on the horizon, a pealing welcome amid wildflowers, the convoy tightened formation. The promise held firm, never let go. Not of the boy, not of the honor that bound them, not of the quiet fight for what was right in a world quick to forget. And now, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The sun hung high over Willow Creek like a judgmental eye, casting long shadows across the town's cracked sidewalks and sagging porches. The convoy eased into the outskirts, engines throttling down to a low rumble that turned heads from every weathered trailer and faded storefront. Dust settled in lazy clouds behind the bikes, the air thick with the tang of sun-baked earth and distant rain that never quite arrived. Ethan led the pack, Noah still strapped securely against his back, the boy's small frame rising and falling with each breath of the ride. The town felt like a relic, trapped in time, boarded-up shops whispering of better days, a single traffic light swaying lazily at the main drag, its red glow flickering like a dying heartbeat. They pulled into the lot of the Willow Creek Sheriff's Office, a squat brick building with peeling paint and a flag drooping from its pole. The cruiser from the interstate was parked out front, its hood still warm, as if it had just arrived. Ethan killed his engine first, the silence amplifying the creak of leather as the others dismounted. Rook scanned the street, his hand resting casually near his belt, not for a weapon, but for the comfort of familiarity. Benjamin hovered close to Noah, helping the boy down with a reassuring pat, while Lucas slipped ahead like a shadow, eyes darting to alleyways and open windows. The Iron Promise riders formed a loose semicircle, their presence a quiet statement, not invaders, but seekers of truth in a place that seemed to hoard its secrets. Inside, the office smelled of stale coffee and oiled metal, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like trapped insects. A deputy behind the counter looked up from a stack of papers, his badge glinting under the harsh glow. He was young, maybe 25, with a fresh uniform that didn't quite fit the town's decay, name tag reading Tyler Grant. His eyes widened at the group, but he straightened, feigning nonchalance. "Can I help you folks? We're a bit busy today." Ethan's boots echoed on the linoleum as he approached, Noah trailing close. Clutching the edge of his jacket like a lifeline, the note was tucked in Ethan's vest now, a talisman against the doubt creeping in. "We're looking for information on a woman who might have passed through here last night," Ethan said, his voice steady, low like the gravel under their tires. He slid the note across the counter, the paper's creases telling their own story. "Dropped her boy at a gas station 50 miles west. Name's Noah here. We're not leaving till we know why." Tyler's gaze flicked to the boy, then away, a flicker of recognition or unease crossing his face. He picked up the note gingerly, as if it burned, and scanned it. The room felt smaller, the air heavier, with the distant hum of a fan stirring papers on a desk in the back. Tyler cleared his throat, setting the note down. "Look, mister, we get runaways all the time out here. Folks hit hard times, make tough calls without a name or description." He trailed off, glancing toward a closed door marked Sheriff. Ethan leaned in, not aggressive, but unyielding, the scars on his knuckles a map of battles won through words more than blows. "The kid's mom mentioned Willow Creek before she left him. That's gotta mean something. You got reports? Missing persons? Anything?" Noah peeked out from behind Ethan's leg, his eyes wide, searching the deputy's face for a spark of kindness. The boy hadn't spoken much since the diner, but his silence weighed on them all, a reminder of trust earned 1 mile at a time. From the back office, a heavier set of footsteps approached, the door swinging open to reveal Sheriff Harlan Brooks, a man in his late 50s, broad as a doorframe, with a mustache like steel wool and eyes that had seen too much indifference. No relation to Ethan, but the shared surname hung in the air like irony. Brooks sized them up, his gaze lingering on the iron promise patches. "What's this about?" he drawled, voice thick with the local drawl, stepping forward to snatch the note. He read it aloud, slowly, each word landing like a stone in still water. "Can't take care of you anymore. Be good, Mom." A pause. Then he handed it back, his expression neutral as weathered stone. "Sad story, but we ain't got records matching this. Gas station that way? Probably out of our jurisdiction." Rook shifted beside Ethan, his jaw tightening. "Jurisdiction don't mean much when a kid's involved. We've ridden a long way, heard this town's got ways of looking the other way on family matters." Brooks' eyes narrowed, a defensive glint surfacing. "We do our job. Now, if you're not filing a formal report, best you move along. Don't need any trouble from out-of-towners stirring things up." The words carried an undercurrent, a warning wrapped in authority, and Ethan felt the ethical snag tighten. This wasn't just a small-town brush-off. There was a rot here, hints of deals made in back rooms where the vulnerable paid the price for silence. Memories of his own past surfaced, the corrupt officials who'd buried his nephew's case under red tape, leaving him to grieve alone on endless roads. Ethan didn't back down, his hand on Noah's shoulder, a steady pulse. "We're not here for trouble, Sheriff, just answers. For the boy." Noah looked up at Brooks then, his voice a whisper that cut through the tension. "Do you know my mom? She had brown hair, and she cried when she drove away." The sheriff faltered for a split second, his mustache twitching before he turned away, barking at Tyler to check the logs. The deputy nodded hastily, disappearing into a file room, the sound of drawers scraping like reluctant confessions. Outside, the sun beat down mercilessly, turning the lot into a furnace. Lucas returned from a quick scout, murmuring to Rook about a trailer park on the edge of town. Whispers of a woman, fitting Noah's vague description, seen arguing with a local debt collector the night before. The pieces didn't fit neatly, but they pointed to something darker. A web of financial desperation, perhaps coercion from those who preyed on the desperate. Ethan knelt to Noah's level, the boy's face flushed from the heat. "We're close, kid. Hang in there." Noah nodded, a tentative trust blooming in his eyes, mirroring the fragile hope Ethan clung to against his scars. As Tyler emerged with a thin file, nothing concrete, just a vague report of a domestic disturbance, Brooks ushered them toward the door, his politeness edged with steel. "Check the motel on Elm. Folks pass through there. But mind yourselves. The group mounted up, engines coughing to life in unison, the vibration a shared resolve. They rode toward the trailer park, the town's facade cracking under scrutiny. Willow Creek hid its wounds well, but the iron promise had a way of unearthing them, not with force, but with the unbreaking grip of loyalty. Ethan glanced back at the sheriff's office, its windows reflecting their departure like a distorted mirror. The promise burned brighter, never let go, even as shadows lengthened and truths began to surface. The road twisted ahead, pulling them deeper into the heart of forgotten oaths. The trailer park on the edge of Willow Creek sprawled like a forgotten battlefield, rows of rusted mobile homes hunkered down against the relentless sun, their metal sides warped from years of heat and neglect. Weeds clawed through the gravel paths, and the air hummed with the distant buzz of cicadas, punctuated by the occasional bark of a chained dog. Ethan guided the convoy to a slow halt at the entrance, the engines fading to a murmur that echoed off the sagging awnings. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight, piercing the sparse canopy of mesquite trees, and the faint scent of wood smoke lingered from a distant cookout, a reminder of lives pieced together from scraps. Noah shifted on the bike behind Ethan, his small hands still gripping the vest's edges, the warmth of the ride now giving way to the oppressive midday heat. The boy hadn't complained, but his eyes scanned the park with a mix of curiosity and wariness, as if searching for a familiar shadow among the unfamiliar. Ethan dismounted first, lifting Noah down with a gentle firmness that spoke of protection earned through miles. "Stay close, kid," he murmured, the words carrying the weight of an unspoken vow. Rook pulled up beside them, his bike kicking up a small plume of dirt, while Benjamin and Lucas fanned out, their movements fluid, like shadows assessing the terrain. They moved as a unit toward the cluster of trailers at the far end, where Lucas had spotted activity earlier, a flicker of movement behind faded curtains. The ground crunched under their boots, loose stones skittering away like fleeing secrets. One trailer stood out, its door ajar, a child's tricycle tipped over on the patchy lawn, evoking a pang in Ethan's chest. It reminded him of his nephew's toys, scattered in the yard before the rain-slicked night that stole everything. He pushed the memory down, focusing on the now. The faint murmur of voices from inside, laced with tension. Rook knocked on the flimsy door, the sound sharp against the quiet. It creaked open wider, revealing a woman in her early 30s, her face drawn and pale, brown hair tangled as if sleep had been a stranger. She clutched a dish towel like a shield, her eyes widening at the sight of the bikers. "What do you want?" she asked, voice edged with fear, glancing over her shoulder into the dim interior. Ethan stepped forward, keeping his posture open, hands visible. "Mom, we're looking for Noah's mother. He was left at a gas station last night with this." He held out the note, the paper worn but insistent in the light. Her gaze dropped to it, and something cracked in her expression, a flicker of recognition that twisted into anguish. She didn't take the note, but her hands trembled, the towel twisting tighter. I don't know anything about that," she whispered, but her eyes betrayed her, darting to Noah. The boy froze, then whispered, "Mom!" The word hung in the air, a fragile bridge across the divide. The woman's face crumpled, tears welling as she knelt, pulling Noah into a fierce hug. "Oh, baby, I'm so sorry." The embrace was raw, the scent of cheap soap and desperation enveloping them, a mother's relief mingling with guilt. Ethan exchanged a glance with Rook, the pieces shifting. This was her, Lily, as Noah confirmed in a hushed rush, her name spilling out like a long-held breath. But the reunion wasn't simple. Shadows lingered in her eyes, hints of forces that had driven her to that desperate act. Inside the trailer, the air was stale, cluttered with unpaid bills, scattered on a formica table, and the faint outline of struggles etched into the walls. Lily pulled back, wiping her face, and waved them in. It's not safe to talk out here. They watch everything. Seated on mismatched chairs that creaked under their weight, she unfolded her story in halting fragments. Debt had piled up like storm clouds, medical bills from a sick relative, a job lost to layoffs in the dying mill town. But it was worse. A local lender, tied to the sheriff's circle, had come calling, demanding payments she couldn't make. Threats followed, veiled but clear: lose the home or worse, lose the boy to better care. The night before, panicked, she'd driven to the gas station. The note her only farewell, hoping anonymity would protect him from the fallout. I thought, if he was gone, they'd leave us alone, she admitted, voice breaking. But I couldn't stop crying. I turned back, but you were already there. Noah clung to her side, the jacket Ethan had given him, now a bridge between them. The bikers listened in silence, the room growing heavier with each revelation. Rook's fingers drummed softly on the table, a rhythm of restrained anger, while Benjamin's medic instincts flared. He noted the signs of exhaustion on Lily, the subtle tremors of stress. Ethan leaned forward, his voice a low anchor. This lender, who is he, and the sheriff? Does he know? Lily nodded, fear etching deeper lines. Harlan Brooks turns a blind eye. It's all connected, favors for silence. If I fight back, they take everything. The corruption unfolded like a dark vein beneath the town's surface, preying on the vulnerable, abandoning promises of protection for personal gain. Outside, the sun dipped toward afternoon, casting elongated shadows that stretched like accusations across the lot. Lucas stood watch by the window, spotting a pickup truck idling at the park's edge. Too casual, too watchful. We've got company, he murmured. Tension coiled in the air, ethical dilemmas sharpening. Confront the shadows head-on, or navigate the web with the precision of loyalty, unearthing truth without shattering the fragile peace they'd found. Ethan met Lily's eyes, the weight of old regrets fueling his resolve. You're not alone anymore. The iron promise, we keep our word. We'll stand with you, make this right the honorable way. As they rose to leave, planning their next move, a quiet approach to the lender's office, gathering evidence through back channels. Noah hugged his mother tighter, the boy's trust extending now to this circle of chosen guardians. The door closed behind them with a soft click, sealing the promise within. Engines roared back to life, a defiant chorus against the encroaching dusk, carrying them toward confrontation, not with fury, but with the unyielding grip of justice. Willow Creek's secrets were cracking, pulled into the light by oaths that refused to fade. The road ahead wound tighter, but Ethan's hold on Noah, on Lily, on the honor that bound them, never wavered. If this chapter stirred something in you, hit that like button. It helps spread these stories of redemption and unbreakable bonds to those who need them most. The lender's office squatted on the main drag of Willow Creek like a bloated tick, its facade a peeling veneer of respectability, faded gold lettering on the window proclaiming Creek Financial Services, the glass smudged with fingerprints from desperate hands. The late afternoon sun slanted through the blinds, casting striped shadows across the parking lot where the convoy pulled in, engines purring to a halt with the precision of a held breath. Ethan dismounted. Noah now walking hand in hand with Lily, her steps tentative but steadied by the boy's grip. The air carried the dry rasp of parched grass from nearby lots, mingled with the oily tang of idling trucks that rumbled past, oblivious to the quiet storm brewing. Rook led the way, his broad frame blocking the door as he scanned the interior through the glass, empty, save for a receptionist tapping at a keyboard, her nails clicking like impatient Morse code. Benjamin and Lucas hung back, blending into the lot's edges, eyes on the rear exit and the alley snaking behind. The Iron Promise riders weren't here for spectacle. Their approach was measured, a thread of loyalty pulling them through the web of deceit without snapping it prematurely. Ethan paused by the door, turning to Lily. "You don't have to go in. Wait here with Noah. We'll handle the talk." She nodded, her face pale but resolute, the lines of exhaustion softening under the faint hope of allies. "Just bring back what's ours," she whispered, squeezing Noah's hand. The boy looked up at Ethan, his eyes a mirror of trust forged in the desert night. Inside, the office smelled of cheap air freshener masking stale sweat, the walls lined with framed certificates that screamed false legitimacy. The receptionist glanced up, her smile faltering at the sight of leather vests and weathered faces. "Appointment?" she asked, voice thin as the paper stacks on her desk. Rook leaned on the counter, his voice a low rumble. "No, but we're here about Lily Harlan's account. Overdue payments, threats, ring any bells?" Her eyes darted to a closed door at the back, where muffled voices argued behind frosted glass. Before she could respond, the door swung open, revealing Victor Kane, a wiry man in his 40s, slicked hair and a tie too tight for the heat. His smile all teeth and no warmth. Kane's gaze swept over them, calculating before settling on Ethan. "Gentlemen, what can Creek Financial do for you?" He gestured to a cluster of chairs, but no one sat. Ethan stepped forward, pulling a folded printout from his vest. Evidence Lucas had quietly gathered en route. Snapshots from town whispers and a quick scan of public records on a borrowed phone at the trailer. "Your services include leaning on single moms until they break. Lily's boy got left behind because of it. We want the ledger, every deal tied to the sheriff's office." Kane's smile didn't waver, but his fingers drummed the desk, a tell of unease. The room felt smaller, the hum of the air conditioner amplifying the tension like a tightening coil. "You bikers think you can roll in and play hero?" Kane scoffed, but his eyes flicked to the window where the convoy's silhouettes loomed. "This is business. Folks like her sign the papers. Can't pay, consequences follow. Harlan Brooks keeps the peace. I keep the books balanced." The name dropped like a gauntlet, confirming the rot Lily had hinted at, a syndicate of favors, where loans became chains and silence bought with badges. Rook crossed his arms, his presence a wall. "Peace? Abandoning a kid ain't peace, it's cowardice." Ethan's mind raced back to his own shadows, the red tape that buried his nephew's truth, officials like Kane who profited from pain. This wasn't vengeance, it was reckoning. The ethical pull of promises demanding light on the dark. Kane leaned back, steepling his fingers. "You've got no proof. Walk away or I'll call the sheriff. Make this official." But Ethan was ready, sliding the printout across, dates of payments funneled through Brooks' kin. Vague threats logged in anonymous tips from locals weary of the cycle. "We got enough to start questions. Real ones, not the kind you bury." The receptionist's eyes widened, her chair creaking as she shifted, the air thick with the scent of impending fracture. Outside, an engine revved, Lucas signaling movement in the alley, perhaps Kane's muscle circling. Tension hummed, a psychological standoff where words were weapons, testing the bonds of loyalty against institutional lies. Kane's facade cracked then, his voice dropping to a hiss. "Fine. Tell Lily the debt's cleared, consider it a gesture, but stay out of Willow Creek's business." It wasn't surrender, but a retreat, the first thread unraveling. Ethan nodded once, sharp. "It's not your business anymore, it's ours." They turned for the door, the bell jingling like a hollow laugh, stepping into the cooling dusk where the sun bled orange across the horizon. Lily rose from the truck bench where she'd waited, Noah at her side, her expression a mix of relief and lingering fear. "What happened?" Rook filled her in briefly, the group mounting up as shadows lengthened, the lender's office shrinking in their mirrors. The ride back to the trailer was silent at first, the highway's asphalt humming under tires, wind whipping through vests like a cleansing breath. Ethan rode point, Noah returned to his perch, the boys chatter about pancakes breaking the quiet, a small victory in the moral fray. But doubts lingered. Cain's gesture felt too easy, a bandage over a festering wound. Whispers from Lucas suggested deeper ties, properties seized under false pretenses, families scattered like Noah had been. The iron promise wasn't done. This was the pivot where redemption demanded persistence, turning personal scars into collective strength. As they pulled into the park, the first stars pricking the twilight sky, Lily invited them in for a simple meal, canned soup steaming on a hot plate, the aroma grounding the ethereal tension. Around the cramped table, stories flowed. Ethan's guarded tales of lost kin, Rook's nods to battles where brotherhood outlasted bullets. Noah laughed for the first time, a sound like sunlight piercing clouds, binding them tighter. Yet outside, a cruiser idled at the entrance, Brooks' shadow looming. The sheriff's call came on Ethan's phone as plates cleared. "Cain says you stirred things. Back off. Or the kid goes to real authorities." The threat hung, an ethical fork, fight the system head-on, risking Noah or weave through its cracks with unyielding honor. Ethan pocketed the phone, meeting his brother's eyes in the dim light. "We ride for the truth. Tomorrow we expose it, all of it." The promise echoed ironclad as night deepened, the trailer's windows glowing like beacons against the encroaching dark. Willow Creek's corruption teetered, pulled by loyalties that refused to yield. In the quiet hours, with Noah asleep in his mother's arms, Ethan stepped outside, the cool air carrying the distant howl of coyotes. His hand rested on the bike's warm frame, a talisman of journeys unfinished. Never let go, not of the boy, the family forged in fire, or the justice that burned brighter than fear. The road curved onward, toward dawn's unforgiving light. The first light of dawn crept over Willow Creek like a reluctant witness, painting the trailer park in muted grays and golds, the air crisp with the promise of a new day laced with unresolved shadows. Ethan stood outside Lily's trailer, his breath fogging faintly in the chill, the Harley's frame still warm from the night's vigil. The distant howl of coyotes had faded, replaced by the soft coo of mourning doves stirring in the mesquite branches overhead. Inside, the faint clatter of dishes signaled Lily starting breakfast, her movements deliberate, as if each one anchored her against the storm she'd unleashed by letting them in. Noah's laughter bubbled through the thin walls, a pure sound that cut through the tension like sunlight, through dust motes, mingling with the sizzle of eggs on the hot plate. Rook emerged from the shadows of his bike, wiping sleep from his eyes with the back of a scarred hand, his vest zipped against the morning bite. "Sheriff's bluffing," he said quietly, voice like gravel under tires. Joining Ethan at the edge of the lot. "But we can't ride blind, need solid proof before we push." Benjamin nodded from where he leaned against a post, his medic's kit slung over one shoulder, ever the steady hand in the fray. Lucas had already slipped out before first light, scouting the town's underbelly, whispers from the diner's night shift, old ledgers tucked away in the sheriff's back files. The iron promise operated on instinct, honed by years of pulling brothers from the brink, not with brute force, but with the quiet unraveling of lies, thread by careful thread. Ethan glanced back at the trailer, where Lily appeared in the doorway, Noah at her side, the boy rubbing sleep from his eyes, his oversized jacket now a cherished wrap around his shoulders. "We ate what we had," she said, offering a plate of scrambled eggs and toast, the steam rising like fragile hope. They ate in the open air, perched on crates and the bike's seats, the simple meal a ritual of solidarity. Noah perched beside Ethan, mimicking the way he buttered his bread with precise folds, the gesture small but profound, a silent adoption into this chosen circle. Lily's story from the night before lingered in the air, her confessions of pressure from Cain's loans, the sheriff's knowing nods during routine checks, painting a picture of a town where justice bent to the weight of hidden debts. As the sun climbed, gilding the rusted trailers in warm light, Lucas returned, his face etched with the dust of back alleys, a manila envelope clutched under his arm. "Got it," he murmured, spreading contents on the crate, photocopies of falsified reports, signatures linking Kane's firm to Brooks' office, evasion of aid for families like Lily's, properties seized under the guise of unpaid fines. No outright violence, but the signs of coercion were there, families scattered, children relocated to safer systems that chewed them up. Locals talk when you listen right. Brooks buried 3 cases like this last year. Mums pressured to relinquish for the greater good. The words hung heavy, stirring Ethan's ghosts. His nephew's file had vanished into similar voids, red tape woven from indifference and gain. Lily's hand trembled as she traced a name on the page. Her own, scrawled in hasty ink. This could end it. Her voice cracked, eyes meeting Ethan's, a plea wrapped in gratitude. He nodded, the salt and pepper stubble catching the light. It exposes the chain, no more abandoning the vulnerable for a cut of the pie. But doubt flickered. Brooks' call echoed in his mind, the threat to Noah a blade held to their resolve. This wasn't a brawl in a bar. It was a moral siege, testing the iron promises creed against a system rigged to break the weak. Ethan thought of the vow he'd made under that desert moon years ago, swearing to stand when blood failed. For the lost, the left behind. Noah's note had reignited it, a spark in the engine of redemption. The group mobilized as the town stirred, shops unfurling awnings with the creak of metal on metal, the scent of fresh coffee wafting from the corner cafe. They rode in pairs to avoid drawing eyes, Ethan with Lily and Noah in a borrowed truck, safer for the boy. The engines hum a steady lullaby as they headed to the old mill on the town's edge, a derelict shell where locals said Kane stored sensitive files. Rook and Benjamin took the lead on bikes, engines low and predatory, weaving through side streets lined with wildflowers nodding in the breeze. Lucas trailed, eyes on mirrors for tails. The mill loomed like a skeletal giant, its silos pierced by vines, the air thick with the musty rot of forgotten industry and the faint metallic tang of rust. They parked in the overgrown lot, weeds whispering against the tires, and approached on foot, boots silent on the cracked concrete. Inside, the vast space echoed with their steps, shafts of sunlight slicing through broken windows like spotlights on a stage of decay. Dust swirled in eddies, disturbed by the intrusion, and the distant drip of water marked time like a hesitant heartbeat. Rook found the office first, a padlocked door splintered under careful leverage, no alarms blaring, just the quiet violation of secrets. Files spilled from cabinets like confessions, ledgers detailing kickbacks, notes on arrangements with Brooks, debts inflated, families coerced into silence or surrender. One entry chilled them, a plan for Noah, post-abandonment, to be funneled into a distant foster net tied to Kane's associates, a profit chain disguised as mercy. Ethan's jaw tightened, the papers heavy in his hands, each page a betrayal of the oaths officials swore. Lily gasped at her name again, linked to threats unspoken but implied, lose the boy or face eviction. Noah, wide-eyed in the dim light, clutched her leg, the scene etching deeper into his young trust. "We take this to the state line," Ethan said, voice a low vow. "Bypass the local rot. Let higher eyes see it." But as they gathered the evidence, a engine growled outside, gravel crunching under heavy tires. Brooks' cruiser flanked by Kane's pickup, blocking the exit. The sheriff stepped out, shotgun casual in his grip. Not raised, but present, a psychological prod. Knew you'd poke where you shouldn't. Hand it over and walk away clean. Tension coiled like a spring, the air electric with the scent of oil in confrontation. Rook's hand hovered near his side, Benjamin shielding Noah and Lily behind a rusted beam. Ethan faced Brooks across the threshold, files tucked under his arm. The moral divide stark in the slanting light. Clean. You've dirtied this town long enough. For what? Pockets lined while kids like him pay. Brooks' eyes hardened, mustache twitching, but a flicker of unease betrayed him. The evidence's weight pulling at his facade. Kane hung back slick as ever, but his earlier bravado wilted under the biker's unyielding stares. No shots fired, no fists thrown. It was a standoff of wills, the ethical precipice sharp. "This goes public, you're done," Ethan pressed, voice steady as the road they'd ridden. Brooks hesitated, the shotgun lowering a fraction, the system's cracks widening under loyalty's glare. "You don't know what you're stirring," he muttered, but back toward his cruiser, Kane following suit. Engines revved, taillights fading into the dust, a retreat born of cornered fear. The group exhaled, the mill's echoes swallowing the moment, victory tentative but real, a step toward unraveling the web. Back on the highway as noon approached, the convoy reformed, files secured in waterproof pouches, the wind a triumphant rush through vests and hair. Noah waved from the truck window, his smile brighter, the note's shadow lifting like morning mist. Lily's hand rested on Ethan's arm during a fuel stop, her whisper grateful, "You gave us back our chance." But Ethan knew the road wasn't clear. Brooks would circle, corruption's tendrils deep. Yet in that miles-blurring ride, with brothers flanking like iron walls, the promise held, redemption not in destruction, but in the unbreaking hold of honor. Pulling light from the darkest turns, Willow Creek receded, but the fight curved ahead toward a dawn where oaths endured. The highway unfurled like a ribbon of salvation under the midday sun, the asphalt shimmering with heat waves that distorted the horizon into a mirage of promise. Ethan rode at the forefront, the Harley's engine a steady thrum that vibrated through his bones, carrying the weight of the manila envelope strapped securely to his tank bag. The wind rushed past, whipping the fringes of his vest and tousling the salt and pepper strands escaping his helmet, laced with the clean scent of sagebrush from the rolling hills flanking the road. Behind him the convoy stretched, a steel serpent of loyalty. Rook and Benjamin flanking the borrowed truck where Lily clutched the wheel, Noah's face pressed to the window, his small hand waving intermittently like a flag of newfound security. The dust from their tires trailed in fading plumes, a visual echo of the shadows they'd stirred in Willow Creek. Miles clicked by, the landscape shifting from barren scrub to open plains, dotted with wildflowers nodding in the breeze, their petals a burst of defiant color against the earth. Ethan's mind replayed the mill's dim confines, the rust-flecked files spilling truths like buried bones, Brooks' retreating silhouette in the doorway, shotgun lowered not by force but by the glare of unassailable right. It wasn't a clean win. The sheriff's parting glare promised retaliation, a coiled threat slithering beneath the surface. But the evidence burned in Ethan's possession, ledgers of graft, signatures linking Kane's predatory loans to Brooks' badge, a chain of abandonment forged in backroom deals. For every family like Lily's, pressured to shatter under financial nooses, these pages were a key to freedom, a moral hammer against the corruption that feasted on the forsaken. At a roadside pullout, shaded by a lone cottonwood tree whose leaves rustled like whispered confidences, the group halted. The engine sighed into silence, the sudden quiet amplifying the distant call of a hawk wheeling overhead, its cry a piercing note of vigilance. Lily eased the truck to a stop, Noah tumbling out to stretch his legs on the gravel, kicking at pebbles with the unburdened energy of a child reclaiming his world. She approached Ethan, her steps lighter now, the tangles in her brown hair catching the sunlight like threads of resolve. "I never thought strangers would become this," she said, gesturing to the circle of bikers dismounting, their boots crunching in unison. Ethan removed his helmet, the cool air brushing his stubbled jaw, and met her eyes. Eyes that mirrored his own scars, etched by loss and the grind of survival. We're not strangers anymore. Iron promise means we choose our fights, our family, you and Noah. You're in it now. Rook joined them, unfolding a weathered phone to snap photos of the files, his fingers steady despite the stakes. State Attorney's office is 2 hours north, cleaner than local channels. We'll courier this. Anonymous drop. Let the light do the work. Benjamin knelt by Noah, offering a candy bar from his kit, the wrapper crinkling softly as the boy unwrapped it. Chocolate smudging his grin. Lucas scanned the horizon through binoculars, ever the sentinel, confirming no tails in the rearview waves. The air hummed with purpose, the faint aroma of cooling metal from the bikes mingling with the earthy perfume of the plains. Ethan felt the pull of his past easing. The ghost of his nephew's laughter no longer a spectre, but a guide, pushing him to honor the vow he'd broken once, to protect what the world deemed disposable. As they remounted, the convoy surged forward, the engines harmonizing in a low growl that built to a roar, tires gripping the road with renewed fervor. Noah chattered from the truck, his voice carrying snippets over the wind. "Mom, did you see the hawk? Like in the stories." A bridge from fear to wonder. Lily's grip on the wheel loosened, her shoulders relaxing into the rhythm of the ride, the trailer park's confines fading like a bad dream. Ethan glanced in his mirror, catching her profile against the passing scenery, and something settled in his chest. A redemption not shouted, but felt in the steady pulse of wheels on pavement. The accident that had stolen his family, the bottle's numb escape, the endless miles chasing absolution, they converged here, in this phalanx of chosen kin, turning personal ruin into collective strength. By late afternoon, the state line blurred into view, a nondescript checkpoint where the air grew cooler. Laced with the promise of pine from distant mountains, they veered off to a quiet postal depot, its facade unassuming under a sign flickering in the breeze. Rook handled the drop, sealing the envelope with tape that whispered finality. No return address, just the weight of truth inside. "It's done," he said upon returning, mounting his bike with a nod that spoke volumes. No fanfare, no triumphant horns. Justice in their world was a quiet handoff, the kind that toppled empires without a single shot. As they pulled away, the depot shrinking in the mirrors, Ethan felt the iron promise emblem on his vest, warm against his skin, a talisman of oaths unbroken. The ride homeward stretched into evening, the sun dipping low to paint the sky in strokes of crimson and indigo, stars pricking through like emerging hopes. They stopped at a roadside diner much like the first, its neon sign buzzing welcomingly, the scent of grilled burgers and fresh pie wafting out. Inside, over plates of simple fare, stories wove tighter bonds. Rook recounting a deployment where a single promise saved a squad, Benjamin sharing tales of mending more than wounds. Noah, wedged between Lily and Ethan, laughed at the biker's gravelly jokes, his note long folded away like a shed skin. Lily's eyes shone, gratitude unspoken but profound, her hand brushing Ethan's in a fleeting thanks that sealed their circle. Word came via text as dessert arrived. Preliminary inquiries launched, Brooks and Kane under scrutiny, the web beginning to fray. Willow Creek would change, slowly, as truth surfaced like dawn over the desert. Ethan stepped outside into the cooling night, the diner's glow spilling onto the lot where bikes gleamed under the moon. Noah followed, tugging his sleeve. "You won't leave, right? Like a promise?" Ethan knelt, the gravel biting his knees, and ruffled the boy's hair. "Never let go, kid. That's the vow." The words echoed his own redemption. The scars of failure transmuted into legacy, a family chosen, loyalties ironclad, justice a quiet revolution. As the convoy rolled out one last time, engines sinking in the dark, The road ahead curved toward horizons unbound. Promises survived, not in grand gestures, but in the unyielding hold of those who rode for the light. Willow Creek's shadows receded, but the Brotherhood's flame burned eternal, a beacon for the lost, the abandoned, the unbroken. Thank you for joining this journey of redemption and unbreakable bonds. If these stories touch your heart, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We've got more tales of honor and chosen family coming your way.